Now that I've set adequate expectations on you so you understand that Play on Linux is not going to run every Windows application seamlessly, let's go ahead installing an application in Play on Linux. Now, you'll need to install Play on Linux first, so if you don't have it installed, I'm assuming you don't, then you'll need to pause this module and go and get Play on Linux from the Ubuntu Software Center. Just type in Play on Linux here in the search box and then install the program. Please note that Play on Linux, especially if you're running a VirtualBox virtual machine, can take a bit to install and to download, and your Ubuntu Software Center screen might gray out and it might look like it's not responding. Give it some time. Give it 30 minutes to even an hour. It does take a while sometimes in a VirtualBox machine. Now, on a physical installation, it shouldn't take quite that long, but do give it some time there. Once you have Play on Linux installed, we can open the application. It should be here on your launcher. If it is not on your launcher, remember you can go to the Ubuntu logo and you can search for Play or Play on Linux, and then you can drag this icon over to your launcher. If it's not there, you can single click in order to open the application up. So here we have Play on Linux, and we want to install iTunes 10. I'm going to show you how to do that. But the first thing we need to do is we need to get the iTunes 10 installer package from the web. Now, moving back to Play on Linux for just a moment, when we click on install over here, we're searching for applications that we can install, but the installers don't come with Play on Linux, so you'll need to get those .exe Windows installers. And it's also a good idea for you to click on the software, single left click on the software you find here, and read what it says over here in this pane. Particularly does not work yet. So here we can see with iTunes 10 that iDevices are not going to sync. So immediately, if you want iTunes in Ubuntu Desktop for syncing your iPad, your iPod, your iPhone, your iDog, whatever iDevice you have, it's not going to work. Furthermore, 64-bit versions are not supported. So it's important to check this stuff. I already had, but it's important for you to check and make sure, because we're going to the web now to look for an iTunes 10 download, and we don't want the 64-bit version because it doesn't work with Play on Linux, and Play on Linux has told us that. So I'll type in iTunes 10 download here. And you can see I've already been here. This is the Apple web page. Always best to get your installers from the source whenever possible. So this is the support.apple.com website. So you can feel good getting that executable directly from Apple. Here we have the iTunes Windows 10.3.1 32-bit installer. And you can see down here in the status bar that this is an executable, as we of course want. So you'll need to download this file. I already have, but you'll need to save this file to a location. By default, Mozilla Firefox will put it into your downloads directory. And once the download is complete, you can resume this module. We'll go back to install on Play on Linux. We'll go for iTunes 10. And we'll hit the install button. Now, it tells us right here that this program's currently in testing. It might not work as expected. Your feedback, positive or negative, is especially important to improve this installer. Okay. Remember, I set your expectations, and now Play on Linux is letting you know as well. Guys, I'm going to tell you on the front end, iTunes is not going to run super great in Ubuntu Desktop. Well, then why am I showing you that? I'm showing you iTunes because it's a popular application, and if you have no other chance to get your iTunes music out of iTunes, you can come into iTunes, you can authorize the computer, you can sign into your Apple ID account, you can download your purchased music, and then you can convert it to MP3s, and then you can move it into some other sort of media manager, which we will talk about in the following modules. Let's focus on the setup for now. It is important that we know a few things. Play on Linux is going to give us some helpful tips here. Do you want to install iTunes 10 to sync a USB device? That's what it's asking us now. I'm going to say no. And now we select the setup file to run. We will browse to our downloads directory. Here is iTunes setup.exe, and we'll hit open. Now we hit next. We're running an installer within the Play on Linux dialog boxes here. If you do not have Wine installed, Wine will install now. You may also see a message from Play on Linux that you are not to change the default installation directory of whatever it is you're installing. Okay, that's important, and you don't need to auto-run the program when the installer's over. So this is now the iTunes installer running within Play on Linux, and that uses Wine. We'll hit Next. We'll accept the terms. Here we go. Here is our default destination. Do not change this path on any programs that you install in Play on Linux unless Play on Linux tells you otherwise. Here we can uncheck all of these boxes. We don't want to add an icon to the desktop. Play on Linux will actually already do that for us in Ubuntu. We don't want to make it the default player, and we don't want to automatically update iTunes. We will then hit install. Auto run is turned off. Do you want to turn it on? No. Remember that we're running this thing in Play on Linux. So we're running this Windows application in a non-native environment. That is to say, a foreign environment. So these things are not always going to work properly, and you do have to have a little bit of critical thinking with what you're asked to do here in the installers. Do we want to open iTunes after the installer exits? No. Play on Linux should have told you, no, don't do that. I've installed iTunes before. So there are a few steps that we're missing in this process, but nothing you need to worry about. You should have been told not to auto-run the program. You probably had to install Wine if this is the first application that you're installing in Play on Linux. We can hit Finish now, and the iTunes installation is almost complete. Once it does complete, we'll see our new application listed here, iTunes 10, and we can do Control Super Key D to get back to our desktop, and you can see that we also have an iTunes 10 icon here on our desktop. So if we double click on that, iTunes 10 will open through Play on Linux. Now it says, warning, iTunes was not properly installed. Do you need to worry about this? No, iTunes was not properly installed because this iTunes installer was supposed to be installed on Windows. We improperly installed it by default when we put it in Play on Linux, which uses a virtual hard drive to run these applications within Ubuntu Desktop. And remember, if you're running VirtualBox, as I am, that you're virtualizing applications in a virtual machine. So that's what you're doing here. Remember, I'm in a virtual machine. So virtualization within virtualization should give you some respect for the fact that this program even opens at all. We don't want you to ask us again. We don't want to download the latest version of iTunes. Definitely not going to work with Play on Linux right now. But look, here's the deal. We have iTunes running. And we can close out these tutorials here. We don't need them. You can go to Store and then sign in. To sign into your Apple ID, your Apple ID account credentials can be placed in here. You'll see that this does in fact sign you in, and you can authorize this computer as you would with any computer where you were installing iTunes. Authorization is complete. So it's already authorized. That's good. Again, I've had iTunes installed before. Now you can move over here. Don't show this message again. You can move over to the iTunes Store, and we'll be able to see all of our purchased music. So again, if you're trying to migrate off of iTunes to an Ubuntu desktop setup, I highly recommend some other programs we'll talk about in later modules. And what you can do here in the iTunes Store is you can see all your purchased music. Just come over here to Purchased. Single left click on Purchased here in the store, and it's going to show you all of the items that you've purchased in iTunes, and then you can find a way to migrate these off, get these out of iTunes, and you can place them into other programs if you'd like to do that. Now, I know, because I've tested it, that here in this VirtualBox Play on Linux setup, the music doesn't play right. Okay, but I expected that, and I set your expectations accordingly as well. Again, it's a miracle that this program is running at all in a non-native environment. And iTunes in particular, because I have several computers that have very fast processors. They're overclocked. They have a ton of RAM. Really good quality computers that iTunes still runs slow on. So it's a miracle to me that we even have this running at all. You can see here, I can click on all songs and then single click over here to view all of my songs that I have purchased from iTunes. And if I want any of these, I can simply select them. And then I can go over here to the little cloud download icon. And I can click that, and that will download this song over to the computer. You can see it's downloading now. And what I'll do is move over here to purchased. You can see that this song that I just clicked on is downloading. This one's already here. And again, playback does not work properly here. But that's okay, because we can go over here to our preferences. And it takes a while for the preferences window to open. So it took quite a while for this dialog box to come up, but now that it is up, we can click on Import Settings. We can change our import setting to use the MP3 encoder. Of course, you can change your quality here as well. Hit OK and OK. And now you can take a song, right mouse click. You know how to do this if you're already familiar with iTunes. Create the MP3 version. And that way you have an MP3 of your purchased music. Now, some of you remember iTunes didn't used to let you do that. You had to burn a CD and then you had to rip the CD to get MP3s. So now iTunes is going to let you do that very easily. You can convert it to MP3 or some other type of format. And you can move that music out of iTunes if you'd like to do that. And I'm going to show you an alternative to iTunes in the next module.